Hi everyone, my name is Indrek. I am the co-founder at Alpha Blues. Great to see you all here. And I'm excited to welcome you to our next webinar, which is on the topic of how to measure your virtual assistant. And what I will do is we will get started with the presentation. And what I will do is, as usual, we will go over the topic, and I will leave questions to you in the end, where you can just type your questions that you have in the comments on the Livestorm application, and I'll make sure to answer them. So let's get started. If you are first-time joiner in our webinar, then we post all the videos about the webinars we've done on our YouTube channel. So just search for Alpha Blues AI, and all the webinar content is there. Easy to watch it. You don't need to register or sign up or do anything. So very convenient to use. A few words about the company before we dive in. As a company, we've been doing customer service, chat automation for a few years. And why we're doing it is because we want to make machines that are smart enough to automate communication so that it brings you business benefits. We have customers all across Europe, and a great team behind it doing all the work and building the product. So far, our bots are doing more than 250,000 conversations each month with customers. So we are well aware of how to operate bots that work at scale and what it takes to do that. Also, as we are a product company, a few words about the product so you understand from where we are coming from and what we're talking about. But essentially, the product focuses on end-to-end chat automation. So on one hand, you can create virtual assistants with customizable chat windows that you could put on your website, with the whole conversational interface builder, where you can build the bot either through the GUI or an API, and also the natural language understanding algorithms inside the product. And this is also complemented by our own live chat product, where you have intelligent routing for routing conversations from the bot to the agents, and also live chat for the agents and statistics. So you have the whole suite of end-to-end chat communication automation product. We were featured also in CNN in April with the work we did with the Coronabot. This was to help the community, a free bot to help people how to deal with the virus. You can access it, coronabot.co. It's up and running with also updated statistics on the spread of the virus globally. So with that, let's dive in. The topic that why we wanted to bring this up today is really because I think it's a topic that many companies and customers of ours have interest in, and there is little, if any, standardization. And also, it's something that I think it's vital for those that are thinking about using a virtual assistant or already have it to understand and know how to measure it. So I'm calling it virtual assistant. We can also call it chatbot or conversational AI. So I'm using these words interchangeably. So why measure in the first place? I think one of the most obvious things is that you are what you measure. So ultimately, you need to have some kind of a numerical metric to understand, what is success, right? What does it mean? And the moment you go and think about that, you realize that actually success means different things for different parties who are involved in the virtual assistant project. As an example, you might have a CFO or the finance department that just looks at it from the pure numerical point of view. How much money did we spend on the solution, and how much money are we saving or making from it? Then you have a head of customer service who thinks of, how much happier our customers now are, or how many less agents I need to serve my customer base. Then you have customer service agents who are looking at, how much time am I spending on trivial questions and versus how much time I'm spending on more complex things or more on sales. Then you have a sales team who's saying, hey, how many leads did I get? Or did the bot manage to close a deal? And then your customers, and they are measuring the bot in terms of, was it helpful? Was it relevant for me? Did I get advice at Saturday morning at 7 a.m. or some other time? So you have to understand that each party has very different expectations for the virtual assistant, and each party measures things differently. And also in this talk, I'm focusing more on the virtual assistant performance as opposed to the performance of live agents of human customer support staff together with virtual assistant. So this is something to keep in mind, and it's very difficult when we were putting together this presentation with our team. There's no single one answer that fits well because it's a pretty wild west in terms of how bots are measured. But I'm giving some guidance anyway. And also, when you think of customer success, then for companies it can mean many things like lifetime value, churn, NPS score, happiness, renewals, whatever it may be. Because for companies, their product services are different, and they might prioritize some things over another. But with that, let's get to some specifics. So to keep it to the point and also important for you. So what should you measure in your virtual assistant? And these are some of the things that we recommend to think about. And with each of them, I'm trying to give some kind of a baseline as well, so you have an understanding. So one thing to measure is what is the natural language understanding rate. And what this means is that if you have a bot and the user asks a question, for example, what time does your store close? Then how well does the virtual assistant understand what the user means? A natural language understanding rate is something that's applicable for bots that have the free text component, because bots are very different. Some are something that you can just click on, some are something that you can write to, some are more like a workflow form type of thing. So here I'm talking about virtual assistants that have a text box where users can type in anything as a free text question, like what time does your store close? And now the virtual assistant has to understand what that means. And essentially, this is intent detection. So this is how well does the chatbot understand the user intent? And as a ballpark baseline, it's about 80% from free text understanding. So let's say you have 10,000 customers coming in and they can literally ask anything. Then I think around 80% of the time, if the bot classifies the answer under a correct topic, is a pretty good result. This can be different. For example, if you tell your customers you can only ask about these topics, then the baseline can be higher because customers won't be asking all kinds of things. Of course, if you have an open-ended bot, ask us anything, then they can ask about, I don't know, not your products, but about the weather or news or latest sports scores, and then of course the understanding will be lower. So I say if you're in the 80% range, that's pretty good. In our product, how we measure it is we actually have a tool inside our product that automatically takes the user messages that customers have sent and then gives the prediction rate, gives the predicted intent, and then after the human bot trainer validates or changes it, then the correct prediction in rate changes, right? So this is a way inside our product to measure it. If you're working with other vendors, definitely ask them of how to measure it best in a way that makes sense most for you. So then the second metric is autonomous solve rate. And this really, if the first measurement was how well does the bot classify understand the intent of the user, then this already takes into account of, let's say, how happy the user was with the answer that the bot gave. So again, we're talking about the free text chatbot. User comes in, asks a question, what time does your store close? and the virtual assistant then gives an answer. Let's say, our stores close at 9 p.m. Today, and then it asks, was it helpful? And then the user explicitly says yes. So that has a choice to say, it was helpful or it was not helpful, and then the user says yes. So this measures the ability of the virtual assistant to solve free text user questions on its own, and asks for the user's confirmation whether it was helpful. And here the baseline is about, it's at 20%, 20 to 25%. And why it's lower than 80% is because even if the intent detection is correct, and we know, and the bot gives the correct answer about store closing times, and that's 80%, then if you ask the user, then the user might not be happy for the answer for whatever reason. One, it might be that it's just a wrong answer, that their intent was something else. Or many times is that they have a follow-up question. So they have a question, yes, but what time does it open tomorrow? Or does it always close at 9 p.m. on Fridays? Or is the store that is in my neighborhood open also till 9 p.m. or 10 p.m.? And that's one of the reasons why the virtual assistant has actually a very tough job, because it's not just giving the correct answer, which it was in the first place, but humans have follow-up questions, and they might not just be happy with the answer because they also expected some other type of information related with that answer. So here you have to understand that different topics can have different solve rates also, which means that, let's say you have a very specific workflow where, let's say, the only thing you can do is, I don't know, view your account balance. And in that case, if the bot shows you the account balance, then the baseline can be higher, because that's the only thing that's possible in that workflow. However, the more general free text open-ended queries you have, the lower the baseline is, right? So again, and I think this is one of the toughest metrics for the bot, because you have a human user asking a question, you have a machine doing intent detection, and then providing the answer that it thinks is relevant for the human, and then asking for confirmation, was this helpful? So I think autonomous solve rate is the toughest metric for the bot in free text queries. But of course, it's the toughest, but it's also for the bot the the closer it becomes to actually human agent. So the next thing is the handover rate from the virtual assistant to human agent. So this is, you measure this if you want to see how many conversations are with the virtual assistant, and then how many of those are switched to a customer service agent, right? And what it does, it measures the ability of the virtual assistant to reduce the amount of queries answered by the customer service teams. And what we see from our data, the ballpark baseline is roughly around 20%. In some cases, it can be higher, it can be lower. But this is, conversations where users are talking with the virtual assistant, and then 20% of those who are chatting with the bot are then asked to be transferred to the customer service agent. So if you operate at scale, you have thousands and tens of thousands of chats each month, then that can reduce your customer service team time considerably, because for the bot to handle 1,000 conversations is easy. For the agents to do 1,000 conversations, I mean, it takes a lot of time. The fourth one is user satisfaction with the virtual assistant. And this is, the user has a conversation with the virtual assistant and then leaves a rating for the bot, and it can also leave text-based comments. So if you're working with a vendor, then it's always good to ask about how it's possible to gather feedback from the virtual assistant. And it measures the satisfaction rate with the virtual assistant. Of course, if you have a live chat as well, then you can implement, in our case, you can implement different satisfaction measurements, one for the bot and also then for the live agents. and for agents specifically, each agent gets their own score and their comments. The ballpark baseline is it varies over time. I mean, we have customers that have 75% of users rate the experience as 5 stars on a 1 to 5 scale, 5 being the best and the highest. But this really depends. It depends how broad or narrow your bot is, how have you developed it, how easy or complex it is, and of course, how long have you had the virtual assistant in production. So maybe at the beginning it's a bit lower, you work more on it, you optimize the virtual assistant, it gets better. Also, if you're using sales-oriented virtual assistants, then a couple of things to keep in mind. The examples previously were more about, let's say, customer service-focused virtual assistant. What you can also measure is how many leads you generate. This can be done through, let's say, offline forms or forms in general. How many emails, how many leads you got. If that were forwarded to your CRM, for example. Did the bot actually generate revenue? Did it? You can have online bots for online stores that recommend, let's say, products, and did the customer eventually buy the product that the bot recommended? Or let's say you can have authenticated users and give them personalized offers. This is something that more customers are thinking about, because bots usually used to be a lot about customer service automation, but I think personalized offering is what's going to happen next for many, especially if your users are authenticated. You can do all kinds of offers and promotional campaigns based on the user's data that you have. So I think that's very powerful. And also, churn reduction, right? So if you have subscription-based customers, they want to opt out of the service and cancel it, how much in those cases the virtual assistant managed to avoid them leaving or give them additional incentives to stay and use your product. So this is to keep in mind with sales-oriented virtual assistants. What you can measure in measure for the bot, what also makes sense is to measure interaction. What we are measuring is, we are looking at the total interaction levels, but then also measuring how many people interacted with text. So how many just chatted with the bot, how many people interacted only with buttons, and how many people interacted with chatting and also with buttons. Because then you see some kind of information on, what's the preferred method of communicating with your company and your brand. Then what you also have is what also we measure about the bot itself is the number of times that the virtual assistant has answered certain topics. So let's say you have 100 or 50 or 200 topics. How many times that those topics came up as answers, and also what was the user satisfaction in those topics. So you can see, let's say, okay, account creation, feedback was 78% negative, right? Okay, so why was that? This is just some sample data, but let's say it was 78% negative. Why was that? Maybe I can go in and analyze the logs and see, what I did wrong. Or let's say in some cases, the promotional campaign had 92% positive feedback rate. So, great, that topic works well. I've built it well. I can duplicate it. I can build on it. So this goes deeper into the bot analytics and insight. And it's very helpful to have once you run it. So I hope all of you are making good use of that. Also, what you have for the virtual assistant specific insights is, the different phrases and words used in conversations, how people are phrasing things, what they're talking about. Are they talking about your new products? Let's say you launch something, I don't know, a new product or service. What are people saying about it? Are they mentioning it at all? Those type of things, because the conversations that you have between the bot and the users is very rich. So you definitely want to make good use of that. Also, you can look at things like revenue generated and churn reduction, things to measure in the virtual assistant specifically. So a couple of things to keep in mind. When you look at all kinds of vendors, what they're offering, or also press releases, then some things that that we we provide as advice. So if there's this thing like speed of answering, I think that's not really important how quickly you answer, because ultimately the virtual assistant is a machine and it answers in milliseconds anyway. If anything, you need to make sure it's not too fast, because otherwise it's just like it's too in your face. Maybe you need to slow it down, because when people have a conversation, it's not just bullets firing. It's I'm talking, the other party's talking, I'm talking. So it's a two-way communication. Then I've seen things like companies saying our bot handles 95% on its own, or we handle 80% of things, or the bot does X% of something. Then make sure to understand here what actually the handling, what does it mean? Does it mean that the bot understands, is it the natural language understanding part, is that 95%, or is it that 95% of people have said that this answer was helpful, or is it that the bot answers 95% of people who chat with it? If you're a buyer looking for a solution, then you make sure what those numbers actually mean, because they can be brought out and made to look very appealing and sexy, but ultimately you want to understand what is it, what is that handle 95% on your own. And also make sure that you measure the uptime or the availability, because you want to have the bot available 24/7. So have the ability to have the bot up maybe when your agents are not working, or also when your agents are working, and then have the bot in front of them during the work hours as well. And also how what's the uptime measured that the bot is available. So these are a couple of things that we have found to keep in mind. And so the last thing, what to do with your statistics. Well, clearly learn from it, because once you start out with the virtual assistant, you don't really know specifically how it's going to work out, and then it's good that you collect data over time. So have month-over-month comparisons and learn over time. That's the best thing. So month 1 versus month 2, and so on and so forth. You have to understand for yourself also what's the use case and the business case for your virtual assistant, and what's your key metric. Is it to reduce churn? Is it to have a higher NPS score? Is it to sell more products, get more leads? And of course, each bot then will be built a little bit different based on your function. So that's why, again, there is no sort of single ground truth measurement for the chatbot. It depends on its functionality. But if you have your functionality, then you can have a key metric aside from it. And then, of course, look into the data that the virtual assistant has, where it is performing well and where it performs poorly. Because it's all digitized anyway, so you should have access to it, and then make your decisions based on that. And also, what your users are asking your virtual assistants. What answers are missing, what needs to be updated, what are people happy with, what they're not. So there's a wealth of things that you can use from the virtual assistant to make it better. Okay, so I will end the presentation here. And if you have questions, write them in the questions pane in the interface, and I'll be happy to answer them. And I think while you are thinking of things to ask, one of the things we're seeing with the with the customers is that the more you have, the longer have you had the bot live, the more you are actually thinking about how to improve it, and you're seeing trends over time. So this is actually very powerful, so that you see what's going on, how well the bot is performing, and then taking that learning from one month to another. Okay, so question, how much data is in a typical chatbot to analyze on a monthly basis, and can one person do it, or should there be more employees dedicated to it? Okay, so great question. In a typical chatbot, the data you can analyze is, well, depends on the amount of conversations, but let's say you have a good amount, let's say you have, I don't know, 5,000 conversations, then clearly you have that broken down into first, the top topics. So the topics that get asked the most, or a ranking of all topics. So the most asked topics, the least asked topics. And once you have that, then you can see sort of a breakdown, okay, what was asked last month? What's the most popular thing? What is asked this month? So, you might have some seasonality, then you can make your bot make it ready for that, or you can see that some things are in the top 3 all the time, so make sure to improve it. Then of course you have incoming messages. This is something that you will use to train the bot. Those can be thousands and thousands of phrases. There, of course, ideally the tool that you're using has a smart and easy way to train the bot and use that data. And this is something that one person can do, because operating a bot, I think if one person does it 1 or 2 days, 2 days per month, then it's sufficient. But of course, if you don't have a good product behind you and all you're working with is spreadsheets and manually, then it can take a lot more time. So that's why it's good to have a strong analytical part of the product in the background, so that you can tweak and get insight from there. Okay, let's see if there are any other questions. Okay, so a question. You mentioned some of the stats, like 80% natural language understanding rate and 20% autonomous solve rates. How long does it take for a chatbot to get to that level? Certainly not from day 1. Well, yeah, so 80% natural language understanding rate. This is something that it's how well you have trained the bot. And the number of topics. Let's say you have, I don't know, 10 topics. Then the understanding rate is, you channel the questions to some pretty broad categories. You have 10 of them, so it's something that you can do pretty easily. If you have more topics, then getting that right fit might take some time. So maybe at the get-go, it's not 80%, it's lower. But if you think of the combination of having enough training data to train the bot and having a good organized structure of the topics that are in the chatbot, it makes a lot of sense. So we actually have on our blog, we have a blog post called how to build a chatbot, or what to keep in mind, where we talk about the topic rating matrix that we've created, to how to think about the topics inside the chatbot and what makes sense. So in there, if you have a clearly organized structure for the number of topics that you have, and they are granular enough, but also not too specific, and you combine that with enough training data, then you can get to that 80% level in a few months time. The 20% autonomous solve rate is something that you have to look at your workflows and analyze them, where you are stalling and where you are doing well. So in that case, if you get those little mistakes and tweak those, it will be something that will get you to that 20% rate. But it's not something that takes months and months and months. It's doable with the right structure of the bot. But yeah, good question. Let's see if we have. Do we have something else that people have wanted to ask? Okay. Do you have a statistics UI or some way to access and visualize virtual assistant statistics? Can it be done by non-technical people? Yeah, so this is something that we built into the product to easily see stats by a non-technical person. So it's a visual graphs where you will see the the topics, the top topics, the ranking of them, the customer positive, negative feedback rates to each of those topics, and also some very exciting things in the insights as well, and learning data from that. So this is something we felt that in our product, at least, is important for people who are working with the bot and making it better, because if you have a bot, you have this communication with so many of your customers, and you want to understand what is being talked about, what are people, how they like your products, do they have ideas for new things. This can be a great source for your product team to see what people are talking about. Maybe there is some easy fixes you can do, or maybe some products they are expecting you to have but you don't have. So this is all that we have built into our UI. That's important for people who use the bot and train it. Okay, so if there are not more questions, I will end it here. And the webinar is visible for all of you on our YouTube afterwards. If you have any questions, just reach out, hello@alphaboost.com. Always happy to help, and I hope you to welcome in our next webinar in 2 weeks' time. So until then, take care and see you around.